A few months ago, I was having a conversation with a leader from one of those 100 organizations that I mentioned that I work with throughout the year. To make a long story short, he was in an executive meeting and the chief financial officer said that due to the pandemic, we may need to reduce staffing by as much as 20%. The chief information officer said, well, that's definitely going to impact the level of service we're able to provide today. The chief financial officer responded by saying, what does that mean exactly? Today, there are many answers to this question. Unfortunately, the CIO in the scenario above had no answers and no real way to get to an answer the way he was set up. For one, they didn't have services defined, and secondly, he wasn't aware of any service level agreements between his organization and the rest of the organization. To answer that question properly that the CFO asked, you would need to know both of these things. Service level management helps us to do three main things. First, establish accountability, not on one side, but on both sides. A provider can't commit to something unbound. For example, they can't say that we'll give you a 5-second page response time on that website, unless the consumer can also commit to some agreed upon volume. I might also go a step further if I were the client, and I would ask the vendor to prove that they have tested the service to that response time for that amount of people that we agreed upon. Like a goal, the terms of a service level should be based on things that are measurable. Not only measurable, but properly bound. I can have a support person respond to a call, but only from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., for example. The time becomes an important one as well as the response time. Cost and service levels go hand in hand. If the client wants 24/7 support, what do they have to pay versus doing something that's 5 days a week from 9 to 5? If the service handles twice the load, how much does that cost? Or what are the consequences? The provider never wants to commit to no charge if there is one missed day of delivery on a service level. Maybe the client wants it for free for one violation. Well, guess what? The cost for that's going to go up. If I'm delivering on that service level 100% of the time, it's going to cost you more money because it's going to cost me more money to deliver that. There could be lots of back and forth on these service level terms and conditions. It's a big part of what the contract and the vendor managers assist service owners with during negotiations. We haven't spent much time on terminology during this course. The reason is that there's a lot of variances depending on the bodies of guidance being used and many other factors throughout the organization. I do want to take a few minutes to define 3 items for service level management because there is a fairly good consensus on these 3 terms. Service level agreements, sometimes referred to as SLAs. SLAs encapsulate the terms agreed upon by a provider and a client. Example, my home internet provider gives me 10 megabytes download speeds for $20 a month, or 500 megabyte download speed for $70 a month. Operational level agreements are often referred to as OLAs. These are typically agreements between the internal teams. If you remember the common service data model discussion, we might have one or more technical services that we use to provide our organizational service. Agreements between the provider, which could be the service owner, and the internal teams that help provide their services, these are called OLAs. Another one of those 100 organizations I worked with, they had a service taken in a request form for citizens. They used another service to look up the address to make sure that it was a valid address for their citizen. That address lookup service broke when it hit 5,000 concurrent connections. This would have been a perfect time to have an operational level agreement. SLO, or service level objective, is a single term in an SLA or an OLA. That $70 package that I mentioned from my internet service provider comes with 500 megabytes download and 3 megabytes per second upload. That's one service level objective for the download, another service level objective for that upload speed. Both of these together make up the service level agreement, but they're individual SLOs, which are the objectives, the individual objectives. When there is a service level agreement in place, there's also going to be a reporting requirement for the provider to provide proof that the service level objectives have been met. Revisiting our service owner workspace once again, we can see two SLOs, one for availability and one for priority one support response time. Note how specific you have to be on these. I can't just say that I'm going to deliver 99% availability because that can be challenged. I have to say 99% availability for each 24-hour period or each day or each month. And that could be starting on the 1st to the 30th. You have to be very specific about defining these. Otherwise, I could have a week-long outage and the provider could say, yes, but over the last 10 years, it's been over 90%. So that time frame is really important on when that measurement happens. And the same goes for a P1 response time. I will respond in less than an hour, but only during these times. Or I will respond in less than an hour during these times 95% of the time. The other 5% of the time, it might be more than an hour. I would expect in most cases that service owners are very involved with the development of these service level management objectives. Going back to our story in the beginning, what the CIO could have said to the CFO if their service levels and their services were defined. Here are a few options. We can leave staffing for critical services at 100% and we'll scale back on those less essential services. Or number two, we can cut back so that we provide 5x8 support instead of 5x10 support for those essential services. The IT executives want their services to be like my internet service provider and know what the SLOs they can affect change on to meet the changing needs of the organization. Ask yourself how you can help get them there with service level management.